Thank you. The room's unmuted, and it's 9 a.m. Squamish-Lillooet Regional District Committee of the Whole will call to order. We'd like to recognize we're on the traditional territory of the Squamish and Lillooet Nation. Our regional district is committed to positive communications and relationships with all our First Nation neighbors. Thank you. Motion to approve the agenda, please. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Knapp. Anyone opposed? Motion carried. I'll try to remember to check the screen for Eric here. Thank you for being in. And Director Crompton is there on the screen too. Good morning. The regional moment. Mayor Huppel, Director Huppel, please go ahead. District of Lillooet.
Thank you. Okay, so the regional moment I picked is the old bridge. So the old bridge, the Lillooet Suspension Bridge, constructed in 1913, replaced the truss bridge that was completed in 1889, which itself replaced a reaction cable ferry known as Miller's Ferry. Miller's Ferry operated between 1860 and 1888. The suspension bridge is a one-lane bridge that was used to connect Lillooet to Highway 99 North up until about 1981, when the Bridge of the 23 Camels was completed. When I first visited Lillooet in the 1970s, my sister had just moved there, and I lived in Prince George, so I came down with my parents. I remember driving on Highway 99 North, which was just a gravel road then. And we got stuck in this huge mud hole on the way. And we finally got here and we came to this bridge. And I remember my dad rolling down the window because he thought this was funny. I didn't. I remember being scared out of my mind as we crossed it, and it creaked and it cracked on the old wooden planks, and it was only a single lane. And so the old bridge has been cleverly named by the locals, the old bridge. Next photo, please. So the fishing rocks. So Cleakett of Papeglia in the Statland community is one of 11 Statland communities. Cleakett manages and takes care of these fishing grounds. The Statland people move to their traditional fishing grounds along the Fraser River to catch salmon, usually late summer or into the early fall. And the salmon remains one of their main sources of food. Next picture, please. Thank you. The fishing racks. In this picture, it looks bare, but other than a construction of a new rack right in the bottom left-hand corner. And next picture.
So what is, sorry, what is that?
Oh, sorry.
What is that exactly?
So that's the fishing rocks that are just below the bridge. So a lot of people, you can stand on the bridge and just watch. So they have them all along that little bank, and that belongs to the Cleakett community. Okay, so, and there's another one there, and it's indigenous fishing techniques such as dip net and net fishing are not only highly productive, but the timing and level of harvest are on point with the fish runs for maximum food supply. Next slide, please. Squam. By summer, you can watch from the old bridge their skills and see the blue tarps that cover these structures to dry the fish, which is called stwan. While my husband is a fan and absolutely loves it, I am not. But it's quite the technique, and it's and so many people love it. Next slide, please. On top of the old bridge is an osprey nest. The osprey has been there for as long as I can remember. It's been there. Director Birch Jones will have but in 2013, the Natural Society installed a webcam to view the activity in the osprey nest and have watched successful nesting, I understand, every year since.
And unsuccessful nesting as well.
Oh.
It can be predated, but there it is. It's all natural. Crows or eagles have taken out the youngsters. And also, they didn't survive the heat though a
Right.
couple of summers ago, but the
Right.
birds faithfully return.
Every
safe
year,
birds.
there's
Yeah.
always, there's,
What are
yeah,
their names?
off and spray. Next slide, please. No question, sorry. So, and again, perhaps Director Birchstone can assist me with this one. Well, I tried to find the houses. There are bat houses here. I could not locate them. I was down under taking pictures of the old bridge, but I couldn't locate them, but we all know they're there. In 2003, the District of Lillooet and the Naturalist Society made the old bridge bat friendly. And the houses were installed as part of a restoration project.
And I'm sorry, I should have sent you those because we do have some pictures. I mean, they're not very interesting. They're just newer wood than what you see on the old bridge. There are 4 condominiums tucked up in the 4 corners underneath the bridge, and they are hard to get down. And
They are hard to find.
the bats find them.
So in the next slide, so I took a
There you
picture of something, this isn't ours, but that's what they look like anyways, something along that line. And a tidbit, 1 bat can consume up to 650 mosquitoes per hour. 13 of the 16 species are found in the Lillooet area, which ironically, we don't have a lot of mosquitoes, so perhaps that's why, but the bats are a contributing asset, but they obviously eat other insects as well. And last picture. So the old bridge is a historical landmark that is part of the Lillooet's Golden Miles of history. Often the walk around the 2 bridges, which is about 8 kilometers, is a source of exercise, fresh air for many people. And the beauty of Lillooet is just an added bonus. And that's it. Thank you.
Well done.
That's just a pedestrian bridge now.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a question for the director there.
Not so much question, but a comment. I love swine.
Do you?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
It's really
Rick is
good.
always like, he's like,
And-
we gotta get some Swan. I'm like,
You
but
know,
I know.
Yeah, over the
Many
years,
people do, or my kids do too.
you know, going to Gun Lake over the years, many years in the winter time. That's when we had to go over that bridge all the time.
Mhm.
So I've been over that bridge many, many times. Yeah,
And I know a lot of hunters take Swan with them too, because I mean,
Yeah.
it's dried fish, you can eat it at
Yeah.
any time.
it's really dry.
It's really dry,
Yeah,
yeah.
they used to trade, Stallion used to trade that with the Choco.
Mm-hmm.
So they went all the way from the Lillooet area, all the way through our territory, through their territory where we are, up and over into the Choco.
What did they get in return?
They got other stuff, yeah, you know, whatever they had.
Meat or something?
They trade.
Yeah, I just wondered what the,
Grease from the coast or
Yeah, hooligan- hooligan oil.
meat, dried oil. But the last couple of years, well, a few years with the returns so poor, a lot of Statlian have chosen not to fish. But it's the wind and the heat of Lillooet that makes that process of making swan. And you can see how they cut it so that the maximum is exposed to dry it out quickly in the wind. And everyone has a job in the family, you know, the little kids have the wasps away. And it's quite beautiful, and it's a real draw for almost everyone who comes to Lillooet. They go down there.
Yeah.
And the brewery is strategically placed just up above, so you can kind of watch down that way and see that view. Very neat. Thank
And in
you.
the summertime, it's, you know, with all the blue tarps and everything like that, and they're all out there morning till
How long?
it's like long days.
Thank you. Are there other questions for Director Hopwell?
that's interesting.
And I'm glad that bats came into the conversation because International Bat Appreciation Day, which fell last Monday, seemed to pass without a lot of bats there.
Had I known that, I would have included that in my info.
So I'll have to get you national coverage next year.
Well, I did submit some articles for the paper, but I wasn't published.
I knew it was, I got a calendar from Lillooet, from the.
I think you better call us back to order.
April the 17th, International Bat Appreciation Day, see on you.
Did she put that in when she gave it?
Yeah,
We're on item 4, and I'm pleased to say,
oh, sorry.
Squamish-Lillooet Regional District Committee of the Whole closed meeting. We have no closed meeting for the Committee of the Whole, so we move on to item 5. Staff reports and other business. I'd like to turn it over to CAO Dalton. Thank you.
No comments for the update, Chair, thanks.
Okay, then we have an information report, current SLRD affordable housing policies.
And we have Ms. Needham coming on Zoom. Oh, good morning, welcome.
Oh, she's not. No.
Are you hearing us okay, Kim? Thank you, we're on
Yes,
item
Chair, I can hear you. Thanks.
1.2. SLRD affordable housing policies, current.
Great. Thank you. I'm Kim Needham, Director of Planning and Development Services. I'm here today to talk a little bit about some of the affordable housing policies and practices that the SLRD has. We give a similar presentation every few years to the Committee of the Whole. So at a high level, affordable housing regulations are covered by our regional growth strategy, which covers areas B, C, and D. And so, as you'll see in the report, there are a number of goals stated with respect to how the SLRD will, try and create affordable housing in various ways. At a second level, we have our official community plan policies. So all the official community plans are a little different, but you can see in the report, all of the electoral areas have various policies and goals for achieving affordable housing. We recently also updated the OCPs to include a number of design criteria for affordable housing, which was great. Just in 2020, in January, before everything went crazy, we approved a housing need and demand study, which covered all of the SLRD. So that includes a number of policies and goals for housing. We also have a community amenity contributions policy. And we talked about that at last month's Committee of the Whole. And the community amenities policy basically sets out guidelines for all sorts of amenities and how we can try to gain amenities through rezoning at negotiations and approvals. And of course, affordable housing is something that can be acquired through our community amenities negotiations. We also have stipulations within the community amenity policy that where we are creating new units or lots, we can get a fee per new lot created. And that's just a payment to us for new development. We have negotiated a number of housing units through rezoning applications and negotiations that we do associated with those. There's a table in the report that outlines a number of recent projects that have where we've acquired various types of affordable housing, typically covenanted, rental housing, etc. Yesterday, the board approved 53 additional units with the Lillooet project. We had an elected officials forum a number of years ago. Some of you were there. That was back in 2016, so 7 years ago now. We did raise the concept of a regional housing authority and a potential structure for that. Regional housing authorities are done in a number of regions, particularly in Ontario. They seem to be able to deal with housing on a more regional level. However, that concept did not gain a lot of traction at that elected officials forum. So yeah, that sort of outlines things at a high level. I'm not sure if anybody has any questions regarding any of those policies or anything about affordable housing in the SLRD.
Thank you for the report, and Director Pettingill has a question.
Yeah, I guess maybe related to the last point, you know, in Squamish, we have a newly formed society, and one of the things I've been hearing there is, we've been talking about as a council is, do we focus on acquiring ownership for the society? So it's fewer units than under covenant, but the society then actually owns them, you can leverage the equity and so on. And so how do you balance that? And I guess that relates to, in my mind at least, the idea of a regional housing authority. You know, is there an economy of scale, and having more owned units, more equity, does that get us sort of collectively further along than sort of each municipality doing its own housing authority and maybe the regional district or a regional housing authority doing another separate one, or should we be trying to pull it all together into one entity? And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, through the chair. I mean, I think it becomes challenging, and I see this with every application that we bring forward, where there's always a question about, oh, well, how are these going to get managed? How is the SLRD going to ensure that these covenants are carried forward? How is the SLRD going to, say, manage a lottery system for distribution of lots, et cetera, et cetera? And you know, it's sometimes challenging for us as small local governments to manage the units that we acquire through rezoning. And, you know, we can usually do it in various ways, usually with the help of a developer or having an outside party deal with the transactions that go on once units are sold and repurchased. But I do think there are economies of scale in having one large regional body who has the expertise and the experience to take on oversight of affordable housing in the same way that Whistler's Housing Authority is doing that. It's a little difficult for small local governments to do it off the corner of their desks. So yes, I do think there is benefit to having housing and the housing inventories that we create managed by a central body. And I think there are models out there that can be emulated in order to do so.
So follow up then, if this was something of interest, and sort of not wanting to ignore the giant list of things we already have to think about, but what would be, like, how would we approach that if we were interested in looking at, you know, what are the next steps? Is it to sort of convene a group of all the municipalities to talk about it? Is that sort of direction that we would need to take?
I believe CAO Dalton has a comment.
Yeah, if I think, yes, it would be starting a conversation with, not in terms of moving forward, but in trying to gather information to bring to the board. And the reason that we're here today is because the board's directed us to be here to facilitate this conversation, but we anticipated that there'd be a next step like that. And so if you know, again, if the board directed us to go away and think about how to better inform board deliberations, conversations away ahead to look at economies of scale or efficiencies, that would be a good next step. And I'd had my hand up to reply to your original question, but Kim said everything I wanted to say. I just wanted to emphasize the answer is yes, there are lots of economies of scale, and as Kim mentioned as well, regions are different. But the other piece is expertise in the affordable housing space is limited. And the more boards you try and build and replicate in associations, you're tapping into the same small groups of folks. So economy of scale, but also, you know, ensuring that you can sustain that knowledge and skill set in what is a pretty technical and from a policy and program perspective, rapidly evolving space. So there's risk with having a number of associations that are led by boards that need community engagement and participation as well. So thanks.
Thank you, Director Demare, and then.
I think Jack was,
Oh, Jack, good, yes. Director Crompton? Director.
I was just. You're muted. You muted yourself, Jack. Sorry, I just want to express my support for a forum, as mentioned by Director Patton-Gill, and I think we may want to revisit the decisions we made in the past to not go down this path. It was a long time ago, and I think the people have changed and the realities on the ground have changed. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Crompton, and then we'll have Director Herford and Director Whitman.
Thank you. I was curious, thank you for the report, and I agree with we just heard from Director Crompton. I think that having a forum and discussion, getting the groups together, and not just the elected officials, but also the various societies or entities doing this work. So I'm trying to think to this, say in the Squamish context or housing society, their terms of reference. You know, we as a municipality have can only operate inside of our, you know, of our boundaries, but you know, school boards have different boundaries. Housing, folks doing housing work maybe take on some of that, and as a way that some of these needs can be met elsewhere. So I think that absolutely having this conversation is important, so that I think a regional approach is important, but I don't think that needs to be accomplished through an additional entity necessarily. Just making sure that we're addressing these things and having a forum to have those discussions, so that everyone knows what's happening and where the gaps are, and where the opportunities exist. So I'd support having organizing a forum in some way, and it makes sense to me that this group is the convener of that, but I wouldn't want that work to fall to this organization or to create a new, unless absolutely necessary, to create a new entity to do that besides the venue. And I'd love to see, I appreciate the extra links in the report, but I'd love to see whatever the material was in 2016 that was presented to that group, just to start the baseline understanding of what, you know, what those friction points were at that time. But I understand it's likely dated and so on, but it would be helpful to context as we go into that. So anyways, that's my I'll leave my comments there. I don't really have there wasn't a question in there admittedly, but so thank you.
And it's Director Richmond.
The forum of a number of years ago was very much the way you described what you'd like to see. It was Worcester Housing Authority was there and presented, and it was staff and elected. And I agree with it. You know, I won't repeat a lot of what I said. I agree with the general sentiment. I would love to see that forum happen again. And I know we're all very reluctant in terms of trying to put more on the list to do. It seems to me that this might be of value to staff here as well down the road. Like it's more to add to the list now, but I feel that listening to Kim and yourself, that there is actually some savings for staff down the road if we were to organize ourselves. At the village, we're just starting to accumulate affordable housing units in some of our new projects. We don't, you know, there's members of our community that ask for an authority, and well, we don't have any land. We're very land poor in Pemberton, so you know we don't have ownership to bring to the table. But being able to tap into, as we do start to build in some affordable housing units, to be able to add those to the pool, so to speak, so that we do have more economy of scale and leverage and perhaps ability to organize, I would be totally supportive of that. So I'd love to see a forum happen too. I'd maybe go back to Craig and say, you know, with your capacity, what does that look like? What does this sound like to you when you're hearing us talk about it?
Yeah, I think this is one of those, you conversations for the board when it comes to priorities that would need to happen, but this is clearly a board priority. It came out December 2nd when the board spoke, and it was one of the items that you'd identified as a focus area. So we'll have to go away and look at what, creating that forum would look like and come back with some feedback to the board. But I mean, the good thing about having priorities is there's a place to place this now and have a conversation about where does it fit on that list. But again, the board made it pretty clear in December 1 too that this was one of those items they wanted to focus on. So we need to figure it out.
As a follow-up, I'd suggest that there are, with Worcester Housing Authority, you're a newly formed society there. Perhaps it is the place of this organization to convene it. I don't know that this organization has to do all the groundwork in terms of the presentations and the agenda and all that. I think we could tap into these communities here and their neighborhoods. So just to alleviate a little bit of that.
Yep.
Director Demare and then Director Rainbow.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just a question for staff. Have you looked at funding to actually do this forum? There's got to be lots of funding out there right now for this topic. And have it facilitated so the staff don't have to do it.
No, but that's exactly what we'll do. Yeah, no, this is not on our work. Like right now, we're not building a forum. We're not, but that's exactly how we'd approach it.
Okay.
Director Rainbow and then Director Crompton and Director Hoffman.
I think Kim made an interesting comment that the work at the moment for staff is kind of on the corner of someone's desk. And yet, when we talk about affordable housing, boy, it's really important to us. And it's one of how important is it? We're at the moment we're reactive. We're certainly not proactive. When we have a development proposed, then we get interested in how many affordable units can we squeeze out of this development. But unless a development shows up, we're not doing anything. So I'm not sure what we can do because Mike made the comment that Edmonton is land poor, and we certainly don't have in the electoral areas. We don't have vast swathes of land that's available to us. There's the possibility maybe of Crown land and working out something with the government. But then when you start talking like that, then we've got the RGS and we've got a sentiment here which doesn't want any kind of development in the electoral areas, that the development must be focused in municipalities and in master plan communities. So we talk in a sense, we talk a good game. We're in favor of developing more affordable housing, but we're how? And so to have a forum and to reflect back on the report that we had done, which is included as an addendum in here, and to really discuss seriously. Maybe it's time that we look at the RGS again. That was developed over 10 years ago now, and maybe it's time for us to think about development in other areas of the region, and not just in the municipalities. You just look at the cost of land in our municipalities and in our master plan communities. I mean, the cost of a lot in Britannia has gone up probably, well, I would say how much, but an incredible amount in just in the 10 years I've been around. So things have changed, and maybe it's time for us to have I agree with having this forum, but we need to go into it with really an open mind and not feeling that we've got to work within the box that we've created for ourselves. It's time to maybe be looking outside of that box. That'll be unpopular, I know, with a lot of people, but tough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's difficult to be the chair sometimes. I think Jack Crompton, you had your hand up, and then Dr. Hopful.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak, Chair. I think those are two very different issues and should be dealt with separately. I don't have necessarily an opinion right now on RGS amendments or an RGS review, which I think we should do. I think that's a good idea, but I think this is a very different discussion and one that's pretty emergent and important. And I'd love to put the resources of our organization and the Worcester Housing Authority behind making it a great event. I thought what Kim and her team managed however long ago that was good. So I would imagine it being pretty similar to that event. But we'd get behind it for sure and be really supportive of seeing it happen. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. And I have Director Hopple and then Director Anderson.
Thank you. So I fully support the forum as well. And but Lillooet we have I say a strong housing society. It was developed when Sumac Suites came in and with Interior Health. But I basically run that housing society, and you know there is a president and a chair. They meet once, twice a year, perhaps. It's a strong society in that it's been around for many years, 20 years. But I don't know how that would work with regards to a forum. Again, I think the forum's a good idea, though. I also would like to see stronger support from the regional district if we are developing some sort of housing, other than a support letter, perhaps there's more as a regional district that we could do to support these requests. We did do, as Kim says, the housing needs assessment for the SLRD. I've read through it. It's great. Lillooet's done our housing needs assessment. So maybe there is more backing that we can put to this support letter as well to ensure that the SLRD is really showing their support for these new entities too, especially when we're, producing them to the government or BC Housing or who the developer or whatever we're doing to our communities. So anyways, I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Eric Anderson.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to offer a suggestion as to something that is missing in the list of policies that Kim Needham has put together with us, and it's not unusual to be missing. This was noted back in 2013 when an affordable housing framework report was produced for Squamish, and the element missing is innovation. Encouraging, I'll quote from the 2013 Squamish report, encouraging pilot projects in construction and design, recognize economic development opportunities and innovation. What this all means is give some focus to innovation in how housing is physically produced. We've got a lot of policy work about financing and land and so on. But we should recognize that we have a community of architects and designers in the region. We have a significant construction industry in Squamish. It's probably our largest workforce. We have probably 3 or 4 prefab panelized building vendors here in the corridor in Pemberton and 3 of them in Squamish. We have community interest in tiny homes and different formats of housing that sometimes have difficulty with codes and our zoning provisions. So in summary, and I'll just note a couple of more footnotes here. The Fountain Band and the Squamish Nation have both had significant interest in developing capacity to not only host innovative housing, but to produce it and work together with manufacturers, and that is prefab manufacturers. And finally, what we see in Squamish with multi-unit housing forms, we are relying almost entirely on lower mainland building materials suppliers and workforce. We should be looking to develop within our region the capacity to actually physically produce multi-unit housing instead of relying on outside suppliers and supply chains. And this will, of course, affect the cost. It should be favorable to affordability to have a local capacity to build this housing. Our housing industry in Squamish is focused on single family. All of it multi-unit and multi-story is lower mainland contractors. So in summary, give some attention to innovation in construction and design and recognize the opportunity to develop within our region the capacity to produce housing in innovative forms, offsite, prefab, and so on. I hope that's all made sense. Thank you.
Very much so. Thank you, Director Anderson. Director Pettigal.
Yeah, I think it's to CIO Dalton. What's the resolution for the next logical step? Or do you need a resolution for the next logical step in moving a forum or something forward, or understanding if it's a priority? Or
Yeah, I think a resolution to direct us to develop a plan and bring that plan back to the board to facilitate the forum as discussed would work. And then we could include in that sort of timelines and where that might fit. And that would give us a chance to go out and talk to the folks that are doing this work and make sure that we approach the how to design the forum collaboratively.
I'll second that.
okay, yes, I'll move that.
Okay, let's get the wording. What are you okay with the wording on that? Okay,
Yeah.
seconded. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. I just wanted to make a comment that I got so very, very excited when I heard on CBC Kamloops that the Lafarge plant, which produces concrete in Kamloops, as the fellow's done all this investigation and he's been to the Greek Parthenon and so on, and he's got earth-friendly concrete happening using recycled glass. And I was doing a little dance around the kitchen, but it was something like the International Bat Appreciation Day. It seemed not too much fanfare, but I'm really excited about it, and I'm trying to get more intel, and you'll probably hear more about the Lafarge plant in Kamloops. Director Duman.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment. We do have the big LaJoy Dam project coming up, upgrade project, and we've got a new housing society. So I'd like to have them involved in this. But we're actually going to have a session on Saturday trying to get a consortium group to see what we can get for amenities. And one of the amenities out of that project will be affordable housing from BC Hydro.
Thank you, and I'm sorry, Director Richmond, I skipped over you.
Oh, yeah, I just want to pick up on a couple of quick comments. Tony mentioned, there's not much land in electoral areas as well to bring to the table. And I don't want to, I'm tempted to, but I want to go too deep into the conversation we want to have perhaps in the forum. But, there are the opportunities, there are crown ground opportunities around electoral areas in terms of Swaziland. And it ties into, I really like Eric's comments about different styles, whether it's tiny home opportunities in the more rural areas or whatever. So exploring some new ideas, like a few of you said. I'm curious. So two things. Number one, again, with that motion being made, I just want to reinforce that to me, a first step would be to contact your counterparts and see how it can be put together. We can call it, but I really don't want to see this all fall when you're in Kim's back and having to find, hesitate. There's so much talent and so much information out there. To me, the first call is to your counterpart to say, hey, there's an interest here. I'm sure there'd be an interest in my council table. So how do we do this collectively? I just want to take some of it off of your back if I can. That's all. Yeah. But I have a quick question. Municipalities were contacted by the Ministry of Housing and asked to voluntarily provide lists of their properties that could be used within the municipal boundaries for affordable housing. Were regional districts?
Yes.
You were asked that?
Yeah. Kim's work, take a look at that.
Did you want to respond further to that, Director Needham? No, okay.
I was just curious if it was just municipalities or regional districts.
Also regional districts, and I have Director Herford.
Thank you. I'm excited to see that this is something that is starting to sort of form. And I would hope it would go without needing to mention, but I want to make sure that the nations within our area or doing work within our area are invited to the table as well, as the need is broad for this work. So I think there's a high level of that's really important. So I know that's I like to I do have a high level of confidence that that's the default position, but I want to make sure that I raise it at each opportunity. So, thank you.
And the nations bring a lot of capacity too.
Thank you, yes.
So we're meeting this afternoon.
Yes, we're talking.
My colleagues and I are meeting this afternoon, so this is good. It's timely. It's and I just want to reinforce that we will approach this respecting all the folks that are out there doing this work now and where the expertise lies, and just in the way that you described, just to enable, facilitate, not only.
Awesome.
Be appropriate to have a motion to receive the report?
We have a resolution, so we don't.
Okay, would you like to move on to the next item on the agenda? 5.3 information report, board strategic planning. Welcome, Patricia.
So the next item will be co-presented by Patricia and I'll kick it off, and then we'll touch on various parts of it. And I think that conversation on housing and the question of where does it fit as a priority, and for me, one of the big questions when I listen to the board discuss that is what potential roles could the SLRD play? Where can the SLRD make a positive contribution? And I think that fits into the work that we're hoping to facilitate the board doing in terms of thinking about that. What are those priority areas the board wants to focus on over the course of the mandate? And I'll talk a little bit about, I'll save some, maybe use housing as an example when we talk about context. So I won't go into why. I just love Yogi Berra quotes. I just think
Who's the other bloke?
deja vu all over again. What's that, sorry?
Who's the other?
Steve Jobs.
Oh, okay.
So I'll turn the next, oh, sorry, I just, before turning over to Patricia, so a bit of context for the board. So the board spent December 1st and 2nd doing strategic planning, general description, strategic planning. What came out of that really, as you've approved, is the 2023 action plan, the priorities that we're working on behalf of the board. And in January, we brought a report forward asking the board to direct us to implement a performance management framework and a different approach to managing our business. And that framework includes a strategy, a corporate work plan, business plan, whatever language you want to use, and a follow-up action list or fuel, which we discussed yesterday. So that's where this fits in. This is the work where we're hoping to facilitate here is the framework within which the board would conduct its work over 4 years. And I've got a couple of pictures to respond to the question that Director Herford raised yesterday. They were cobbled together this morning, but I hope they're helpful and we'll get to them here. But I wanted to just let the board know, situate you. We went ahead in 2023 with what do we want to do? What's the board want to do now? This is kind of stepping back after a number of months of being in the role and thinking about that framework, thinking about vision, mission, purpose, and strategic themes, strategic goals. Yeah, so I'll turn it over to Patricia.
Sure. Thanks, Craig. Nice to see everyone today. So when we talk about strategic planning and why we want to move forward with this work with you, I'm sure you've all been involved in strategic planning in various roles, but we know that there are many, many ways to do this type of work. And we could probably have a whole session on deciding on which way to do that, but we're not going to do that. This work it helps direct the organizational strategy, but then we also know that drills down to our team, and that it helps to inspire the team and develop organizational culture. And we saw in some of our employee survey results that we did in the fall, that that's important to people, that people that resonates with them, and that knowing that vision, mission, purpose, direction of the board and the organization helps them to do their work, and that's what they're looking for, those pieces. And then we also heard that this work also allows the board to communicate its vision and mission and purpose with the communities. And we heard that in our external communications and engagement survey that we did in the fall as well, when we asked people in terms of the different things around the SLRD, what they felt that they were familiar with and had a good understanding of. When it came to the board's role, and then the organization's vision, mission, and purpose was an area where we saw people overwhelmingly responded that they did not feel that they were clear on those things. So it's good timing, I think, too. And then it presents us with another opportunity once we've gone through that work to share that with the public as well.
I think I talked to this one. It's a free slide. There we go. So this is the picture I was speaking to, just to graphically depict both the tools and the process associated with the performance management framework we're hoping to implement. So the top picture there is the strategy, and that's really a framework that consists only of vision, mission, purpose, and strategic goals. What is the vision, mission, purpose of the organization, and what areas does the board want to focus on? That spans the course of the board's mandate, unless the world suddenly changes. And I think COVID was a good example of where a lot of organizations said, wait a minute, we need to reflect on the changes this is driving. But in our world, certainly once every 4 years, we think it's a good idea for the board to do that. The next level down in the middle, you see SLRD action plan annual, and that's what the board approved in January. So that middle row, and the way we see that unfolding here is as every year of the board's 4-year mandate within the framework set by the strategy, the board would establish its priorities and action plans for that particular fiscal year. On the left-hand side below the action plan, you see the bottom image or box there, the corporate work plan. That's how we translate the board's direction into action and into initiatives and assign work, and that's how we manage that work. Any questions on that from a framework perspective? Strategy, op plan, work plan, strategy, board action plan, and a corporate work plan to do the work. So pretty standard stuff that I'm sure from a municipal perspective is how you're operating. And then just inside of a year to get to Director Irwin's question yesterday and where the follow-up action list fits into this. So again, at the top of this slide, you see the action plan. So the board's direction to the organization for what is to be focused on for 2023, so the current year. As I indicated in the previous slide, we have a corporate work plan that tells us and we communicate to the organization how we're going to do that. And below that, you see the follow-up action list or the fuel. And that's a parking lot or a placeholder list. That's where things go to be ready to be actioned once capacity is available and or the board says, no, something's changed. So this housing is a good example. The board could say, if you look at, if for sake of argument, Kim and her team in planning, we're going to conduct that forum. And the board doesn't want to wait until it makes its way up their list. That's a priority. Let's get that done. We go into our work plan and Kim looks at what's on the books and she moves what needs to be moved to put the board priority up. So that's how the fuel interacts with the work plan, if you will. This is very dynamic and the world changes and the board's priorities are going to change and we have to be ready to respond to that. What's indicated here is that the plan for us, as we did in April, was our first report, is quarterly we report progress to the board. And that progress report includes the documents you see on this slide, an action plan with an update, the work plan with updates on specific initiatives, and the fuel. And that's an opportunity for the board to check in and say, are we comfortable with the action plan? Has anything popped up that we want to change our direction to staff? Are there any new initiatives that have been added to the fuel? And the red star at the far right-hand side indicates that in the fall, when we report in September for our Q3 report back to the board, that should be the start state of talking about 2024. So what have we accomplished in 2023? What's the state of those initiatives? The world's evolved, and we need more than a 2-day conversation with the board to enable the board to set its priorities for 2024. That point and the key tool for that conversation in the fall will be that follow-up action list. And the last thing I'll just point on this slide too is, as Patricia mentioned, there's also communicating to the public here. And so at each one of these quarterly reports, that progress is reported publicly in the board forum, but the board chair also reports, as she did for the first time in April, on performance to the public. We've issued an RFP to acquire a digital system that the board gave us the approval for. And so ideally, 6 months from now, this will be one tool that will be much easier for all of us to access, manage, produce reports, depict information, and incorporate a whole bunch of other things into that as well. But one other thing for the electoral area directors. So that red star is a key point. And I won't get into any more detail on the process around that Q4 work, that priority setting work for 2024. But that's the point at which, as a staff, we need to take priorities from electoral area directors. They need to be brought to the board forum. We need to help the board say, here's what we want to do in 2024. And I'll use an example and pick environmental services. And let's say every electoral area director has got things they want environmental services to do next year in terms of trails, just for the sake of argument. That all needs to be brought to the board. That needs to be prioritized. We then need to go away as a staff and say, what have we got the capacity to do? We know the board's prioritization list. We'll have operational work that needs to be done as well. So folks, as you know, they're not sitting here waiting for the board to tell them what to do. They've got operational day-to-day tasks that need to be accomplished. We then bring that back to the board and say, here's our cut at how to respond to your direction. And using that environmental services piece, we can action 4 of those 10 priorities right now. And then we have a conversation with the board and we go into 2024 and we're working to that action plan, and those items that may not be able to make the cut for 2024 go onto that fuel. And again, when there's capacity available, there's a conversation to move those along.
Director Demare, question for CAO Dalton?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Is there going to be another file of the completed items on this, so that we can see what's actually been completed?
Yeah, so not now. We could make that happen hydraulically now, but when we have a digital system, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's no questions on that. I'll go. This Patricia hit this point earlier, and I just want to emphasize that we're trying to make this as practical and pragmatic as possible. You could, as you all know, spend years navel gazing when it comes to strategic planning and operational planning. That's not the aim here. We need to act our size and develop a system and approach that we can manage. Having said that, if anybody has particular thoughts, ideas about changing this, or it's the board strat plan at the end of the day, but just to let you know that we've tried to pick what we've described as not to diminish the quality of the work, but frankly, a speed dating approach to getting this done, which we'll walk through.
This me?
Yeah.
So yeah, Craig already used the speed dating term, which I was kind of.
Sorry.
So yeah, it'll be, what did we say, 2 hours? We're thinking focused 30-minute sessions on kind of each question that we're presenting. So today is about just setting that stage a little bit for everyone to give you a sense of what's coming your way, and get some support for our proposed process moving forward. And then in May, and we have some homework that we'll talk a little bit more about that coming up too. But and then the idea is that we would come back, reconvene in May with the first workshop that would be the vision, mission, purpose exercise, with the concept of sort of small group tabletop exercise. We've got some homework for you to take away and start thinking about how you would envision a vision, a mission, and a purpose. So come back with that, work on those. Come back in June, talk about strategic goals, go through that exercise. The work that we do in May will help set the stage for that. And then in July, come back with the final presentation incorporating everything that we've heard from the board and then also from staff with some presentation and some discussion and recommendations. And this just maps that out a little bit more and speaks a bit more to that homework part. And it just gives you a bit more of a visual idea of what we're thinking about here. So we're today setting this up to give you an idea of what's coming. We'll go away with some homework, come back in May, go away again with some homework, come back in June, more homework. And
Yeah, and if we could just jump in, and so staff homework too,
Yes.
not yet, we're not the teacher assigning homework, we're assigning homework to ourselves. But using some of Patricia's language too is so this is not about wordsmithing. We really want the core ideas from the board to come out in these little speed dating sessions. Our role is to function like the editor.
Yeah.
So when you do your vision, mission, purpose, small table conversations, we'll take that away and we'll craft what we heard and bring it back to you. So it's not going to be a potato exercise in it. And as Patricia indicated, we'll bring that back for review while you're doing the next piece of work.
so this touches on the staff engagement piece with the idea being that we want to share with the broader team what the board has come forward with in terms of our thoughts around vision, mission, purpose, and share those drafts with the team as well and provide them an opportunity to have some input. We did do some of this work internally last year as well. So this isn't, they're familiar with this approach as well. And I'm sure we'll appreciate being part of the conversation. So the goal is to take what we board discusses, share those some drafts with the team, get their input, and come back with proposed clear vision, mission, purpose based on all that input.
Yeah, and I don't know if it may be too much detail, but maybe not. Can you talk about the going from individuals vision statements to small group vision statements to one? Like we're gonna go when we're gonna ask you to spend a little bit of time and carve your statements, bring them in, sit at a small group. We'll take those three, we'll build them to one. We'll go away and take the three. We'll build it. So it's a whole bunch of ideas from a team boiled down to one crafty statement, which hopefully sounds something different than chicken, rooster, duck. Hopefully it's meaningful, but we're confident we can make it work. Any questions on the process? Does anybody have any concerns with that approach? So 3 short, sharp workshops that are driven by a little bit of homework. We take the results away, bring them back, keep the process moving, and by July we have a strategic plan framework.
I like it. And I think when you structure something that way, rather than when you sit in a big room and you have a presenter and you're trying to do things in one whole day, that's not necessarily productive. I think that this will enable us to really focus on things and to work through at a pace. And I think it's a really good approach.
Mm-hmm. I thought that the homework was for today, so I'm feeling a little bit lighter. I've done my assignment, it's here.
You're good.
I think we should make a point of mixing up the area directors and the municipal directors.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Not allowing that divide.
It's excellent.
It sounds like we should all make the effort to be here live. I don't know if you've got a
That's a good point.
thought about how you do small table discussions with Zoom.
Thanks, and we can't. So we're it really, our thinking was it would be for those that could get here and do it live. Yeah.
There's good travel in those months, so that's helpful. Director Herford?
Thank you. Having almost completed, 98% completed our strategic planning process at the district of Squamish. We did have a few times where actually it was Director Pettingill had, wasn't able to attend, but we found ways. I think it's really important if you cannot, health-wise, whatever, we did FaceTime calls into the small group. Like there's ways that we can accommodate. So I think that for this to sort of stick and have the appropriate weight that we want, that ideally everyone's here, but everyone's involvement, I think, is more important than their physical ability to attend. So if there's I don't know what, a storm takes out that highway, someone's ill, figure out ways to incorporate as best we can. And it was, I don't know how your experience was, Director Pettingill, but I know that I was impressed with the group's ability to find a way to accommodate. Because if there's any piece that feels excluded, then the buy-in isn't there. And I think it's really important that we come out with whatever we come up with is something that we are all behind, so we can really drive it forward over our time here at this table. So just wanted to highlight that opportunity. Although all physically being together is absolutely the number one choice, but.
Yeah, and thinking about it we'll plan an on-site session, but I've just been through an exercise myself where my small group couldn't make one or two we did it on a different day. So we'll be flexible and make sure that very important point is worked into it.
Jack, were you wanting to add a comment? I just see your screen muting.
I unmuted by accident, sorry.
I'm really trying to watch the screen.
Good work, Chair.
Jack.
So if there's nothing else on the process piece, we did want to walk through just Patricia share some of the common definitions, because as she mentioned, what one person calls a vision, another person will call a mission and purpose. So we've just picked one and we're going to run with it, but we want to make sure everybody gets a sense of what those definitions are and that framework is like. So if we can call the presentation back up briefly.
Oh.
Beautiful. Yeah, it should be credited.
So this is just a very short stage setter session. I wanted to speak a little bit of context because I find the work you're about to do both interesting and challenging at a regional district. And Chair Ford and I attended the annual Regional District Chair CAO conference a number of weeks ago now, and it was really interesting to see 27 regional districts report in on what they were doing, what their priorities were. And one of the interesting things was almost all of them talked about how they just completed or had just started or were planning to start this exact exercise. But what was neat was how different each regional district was from the other regional districts. And there were far bigger differences in that forum than I would say you would ever see municipality from Manitoba to Nova Scotia to Nunavut. Like regional districts are interesting as we know. And so I think this process is both more important, but also a little more challenging. And that's why we included as those references. It's not not meant to insult anybody at all, but every time I read that regional district primer, I think, well, I learned something new, but I also am reminded that these are strange sort of creatures. And the other thing to think about when the board thinks about strategic priorities is it's not it can be a blue sky exercise, but there is a regional growth strategy that the board may want to look at and think about as a framework within which to do. If you're looking at how to identify your 4-year goals, there's something out there to guide where you may want to start. And you may want to color inside those lines of the RGS or you may not. It's not as direct a link as an OCP might be to a municipality, but it's very close. And so some of the strategic themes might already be there. It's not unusual to see these 10-year strategies or community plans in jurisdictions that people and communities spend a lot of time and effort and work on. And then the only time they look at them is when they want to support a point they're going to make, or 10 years later when it has to be redone. So it's an interesting context to think of. And other regional districts, again, I find it neat just to go online and look at, well, you know, housing was the conversation earlier. There are regional districts that are up to their eyeballs in housing work, because that's just how it's evolved there. And they were asked to play a role, they played a role. There are others that have nothing to do with that. And so it's really neat just to, you can get some ideas, I think, from that too.
Yeah, so this slide just talks a little bit more around, what these things mean. And again, we could spend a whole day on just trying to define what a mission is and what a vision is. And what one person says is a mission statement might be what someone else thinks is a vision statement. And that's not really as important as finding things that work for us and are relevant to our organization. But I liked this graphic. I can't read it from here under the pictures, but it does do a nice job of visually explaining that a little bit more in detail. So your mission is your vision and action, connecting your purpose with your impact, which I thought was a nice way to tie it all together. And really when we're talking about mission statements, when we know what our vision is, the mission statement we want to be thinking about is how do we get there? So when we're thinking about mission statements, we can ask ourselves, what does the SLRD do, and who are we doing that work for? When we're thinking about our purpose, we're really looking at the compelling reasons why we exist, why we're here. And of course, our vision would be, what do we desire to achieve in the long term? What do we aspire to? So I think these slides talk a little bit more about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just some guiding questions on when you're going through this exercise of drafting what you would envision as vision, mission, purpose statements for the organization.
Anybody have any comments about those definitions? Do they rub anybody that?
It's not a comment. I think that I like the way you've broken it out and lead us through that. I'm curious that you said earlier, this isn't a wordsmithing exercise. So, if we look at the why, words like stewardship come up, protection of, et cetera, et cetera. So when we bring this back, to me, I don't know how much I want to take those words and turn them into a wordsmithing exercise. And for me, it's governance, it's land planning, like the why is to govern land planning, the stewardship, so is the idea that I refine that more when I come back for the next step with the group, or is that the starting point we're looking for?
Yeah, I would say we'd work with either or. So if what we're looking for when the small groups come together to talk about vision, as an example, is those words, those themes, not necessarily how pleasant they're put into a statement.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do the editing and trying that. We're really looking for those keywords that resonate with board members around that item.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'm on the right track.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the expectation would be that at those small table sessions, if we have 4 people at the table, there would be 4 versions of each. That may be exactly what you just said, some bullets, keywords, as opposed to, a full sentence that is aspirational. And I would guess that we will see lots of themes and overlap and consistency throughout.
Awesome.
And so we will have a recorder with each small group too, a member of the leadership team, to kind of make sure that we get all of that. And then when we go away and prepare a report back to the board at the next workshop, we'll share what the other groups were saying. We'll bring this back in a way that that as much information as possible is shared across the board. Just on strategic goals, just wanted to pause here in case there were any thoughts, ideas, comments from the board. This is, and just my perspective on these strategic goals is the value for an organization is in providing that framework, that way to help everybody think about how to collate activities. The days of strategic goal 1, priority action 1 point alpha, 1 point bravo, like the world doesn't work that way. I think the world's moved on, but as an example, a strategic goal of a livable community that has a subordinate goal of affordable housing and on and on and on. The power is in the framework because it lets the board express its priorities in a way that the public will understand, and from an organizational perspective, we can organize work around. This is personally, this is the step that I think is missed in these exercises. And so you get strategic drift, but I don't know if there's any thoughts or ideas from the board on strategic goals. Do strategic goals make sense? Strategic themes? Again, is it a goal? Is it an objective? Is it an action? There's a million different definitions. This is an area that I think from a planning perspective, we're really keen to help the board get as clear as they can.
Tony, I think, and then, yeah, Chris?
Yeah, speaking to that, I think that when we go through this exercise, we should end up with something that is guiding us. I mean, that's sort of the purpose, if you like. But in doing that, it needs to be attached to reality, so that when somebody from the public reads our mission, our goal, they don't think, oh, pie in the sky. What's that got to do with anything? What's that got to do with me getting a building permit? That sort of thing. So when we do it, we express what we see as important, what we want to do, what our plan is. But the public needs to see that, read that, and connect it with their lived experience with the SLRD. And I think it's difficult to do. And I think we have to keep that in mind. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. That's a bit of exaggerated.
Dr. Pettingill?
Yeah, just to your question, I think what stands out to me, and everyone's got different, like you said, different ways of framing this. I like to try and think in terms of outcomes. So outward facing, what's the change that we want to make for the person on the street? That's what they care about. So that's the one thing for me. I would call it the outcomes we are looking for. And so it's not the how or the, we're doing this because we think it's a quick way to do that. What is that we want to provide the person on the street? And then the other pieces around values, which I think comes in constraints. So an example that I've heard before and I've used is, robbing a bank might be the quickest way to fund what we want to do, but our values are such that even if it's the most effective way, our values won't allow us to do it. So there are some constraints around the outcomes, and those are the two things that we say at the board level. So nothing illegal, immoral, or imprudent. Kind of at the
Of course, your values on it.
and so I started to look for however we describe it. I'm looking for those components.
Yeah. I would say that's helpful too, because one of the things for me, and back to this regional district strategic planning is when I look at some work that's been done previously and I try and understand whether the outcome's achievable, I struggle. And I don't have any answers. I'm just sharing one of the concerns I have in trying to help with the team facilitate this is I think it's more challenging for regional districts to find those outcomes that they can really find the levers to pull. And housing is a good example. Like when I listen to the conversation, I'm asking, okay, so what can we actually do? How can we help the board understand what levers they have in a regional district context? Because they're very different than in a municipal context. And so I think you certainly take the point on outcomes. And I think the challenge is how do you find those that are meaningful? And climate action would be another great example, right? Is it important? Absolutely. Can we do anything about it? Sure. But is what we can do, or does what we can do rise to the level of a priority for the board? I don't know. It's a really, I think this is a challenging piece, a more challenging piece of work than the average person would suspect.
Thank you. I think Director Hospital had a comment.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny that you say that word achievable because that is just what I had written down prior. And I think that when we're thinking about goals, I personally think that the board should have goals that are achievable, that are doable, because otherwise they are just words out there. And we need to be able to stand behind what we're saying that our goals are. So we want to say that we want to, I don't know, end homelessness or something. Is that within our scope? Probably not. You know, we want to do what we can for it, but you know, I just want to make sure that what we're putting down, our words are achievable, doable words. Thanks.
And Director Demare.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. It's interesting to talk about constraints and, you know, as mentioned yesterday, I've done lots of terms of reference. In 2015, I was on the Lake Ratepayers Coalition for some cutting permits that were happening. And we developed a terms of reference, and it was the very first one at the bottom we put constraints. So I think I look at infrastructure. You know, one of the mandates for local government is infrastructure, making sure that we got clean water, that the infrastructure is in good shape, and we got asset management coming. So, and the funding for it. Like mentioned, we still got wood stake pipes in our water systems. So funding is a big constraint. So when we start looking at, you know, we're gonna blah, 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 you know, with the infrastructure and so on and so forth. And, you know, if it pops up in this, it's a constraint. So I think even building a constraint element to the strategic planning would be pretty good.
Would it make sense if we built that list as we do the workshops?
Yeah.
Like if we keep a running list of
Yeah.
keep a running list of general questions, concerns, but maybe start to flesh out that list of constraints? Because one of the things we will go away and do on your behalf is that feasibility test. Well, when the board says, here's where we want to go, we will go and do our best to say, is it red team it, if you will, and say, is it achievable? And
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
These are just some links to some tools, and they're in the package. So they're easily accessible. And also our some information on our website around the what we currently have there in this area, and the regional growth strategy. Excuse me. And of course, if you have your favorite strat planning, vision, mission, values, purpose setting, resources, take a look at those too.
we have two vision statements now. Actually.
Yeah, we do have two.
We have more than
Yeah.
one.
We have one on our overall vision statement, it's on our website, and another one within the regional growth strategy, so which was news to both Craig and I think,
Yes,
so.
that's good. 2 for 1.
We discovered it. Oh, and more tools, strategic goal references there, that might be helpful.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. And there are some, within the presentation, there were the slides, that just have the vision, mission, and the guiding question. So, you know, if those are helpful, right onto those slides, those pieces of paper or post-it note or whatever works.
Interpretive dance.
Interpretive dance would be entertaining.
Thank you very much.
If you want to email me some thoughts ahead of time too, that's.
Yeah, and that's a good, like, if I know you, going through these, gone through these, but yeah, don't hesitate.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that presentation and everyone's comments. I'm really happy I've started my homework already. Get a gold star.
For achiever.
Next,
Actually, just
yes, Chris.
I would appreciate if it's not unreasonable to ask, but reminders about homework are very much appreciated by, because with so much coming at me, it's easy to forget things, so just throw that out there.
I'll talk about Chris.
Yeah, well, we can do that with the when the agenda goes. Just for yourself, if you'd like, we could. We'll definitely include electric shock.
Does it count? Is it going to be marked?
No, spelling doesn't count, full sentences don't count, no marks. Everything's an A.
Oh, okay.
Excellent.
I was gonna say there could be an open book test, but.
Okay,
I'm not
okay.
gonna mark
No,
it.
that's.
All right.
Does it count?
May I interrupt you, Director Rainbow? We need a motion to receive and then we can move on. Thank you so, you did, thank you. I thought that's what you were doing. Director Rainbow, motion to receive, seconded by Director Herford.
Thank you, Patricia.
And I believe we are now recessing or moving on to, very exciting. Call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carried. Thanks so much. And
It's only 10:20.
well,
I was curious to see if the chair was going to suspend the order or if we were going to go now.
well, yeah, you're right.
Rest of it is-
Sorry, thank you.
It's Jody Atwater.
Would we finish? Well, we should definitely take a recess, if nothing else, so that I can go down and get some of that food and.
Take five.
So let's recess until 10:30. Okay.
Try
10 minutes, 9. And I see Director Eric Anderson there, and I don't see Jack yet. So I think we've agreed to move Pitch-In Week to the end of our activities today. And so the next item on the agenda would be director report, chair's verbal report, none. Decision on late business, we have none. Late business adjourn to go back into a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Director Herford, seconded by President Whitman.
If we have a resolution about Pitch-In Week, I've been picky here, it's on the agenda, so.
Would you like a resolution?
I don't know.
You just recess.
Yeah, we're just gonna have a phrase that says the committee agreed to move it to the end.
Okay.
Thanks, so.
Yep.
Yeah, I definitely need help with this complicated order of business at the point. Call the question on the adjournment. Call the question on the adjournment. All right, everyone is in favor of that. Okay, good. So then we're back into our regular agenda. And we do have item 15 recommendations from the committee of the whole. We have one. Clark's going to read out.
The resolution that staff develop a plan to facilitate a regional affordable housing forum.
Thank you.
That's okay.
We'll move that.
So with that,
Thank you. Recommendation seconded by Director Hopwell. Okay, motion carried. Now we need a motion to go back into our close. Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Hopwell. No one is opposed. Motion carried.